Action.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Johnson, and with me is scientist Frank Marchis, and this is the Grudge Report, SETI Institute science show following Star Trek Discovery's latest episodes. Spoilers abound, so if you haven't watched the most recent episode, turn back while you still can. This week's episode was far from home and finally reveals what happened to the USS Discovery and its crew. Once again, we open with a wormhole and a crash landing. Frank?
Yes, so this episode is basically a parallel to the first one, except that this time, instead of seeing what's going on to Michael, the science officer, we see what's happening to the USS Discovery and the team. So it starts with, as the previous episode, a traumatic event with the crash landing of the spaceship on the surface of a planet. A planet which is very weird. We may talk about this planet. I kind of liked it because it's there is a lot of physics involved in the planet itself, the structure and the surrounding.
Well, I definitely want to ask you about that crash landing because they referred to it being 50 meters of ice, and I wanted to understand, and maybe you could explain why that was important for the crash landing of the ship.
Because ice is not as dense as rock, probably. There is one thing. So they probably wanted to land on a surface which was not as solid. And they also used the phasers at the beginning on the ice. And I think it was to kind of melt the surface. So when they land, they were landing or crashing, because there was more crash here, crashing on a surface which was not as hard. So there was some kind of dampening effect introduced by the ice.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
I totally made this up, right? So, but well, then we have the typical Star Trek story where they realize that the spaceship is significantly damaged. It's stuck in the ice. We have this moment where two of the crew members save the spaceship by connecting this the plasma manifold rupture or something like that.
There was so much technobabble in this episode. I didn't even want to touch on any of the technobabble because it was overwhelming. I think half my notes were, what was that? What does that mean? Why are we calling it that? Okay.
So we're gonna skip this part because for me it's not the most interesting part of the show.
No.
And then there is this kind of discussion on whether or not they are going to go outside the ship to get some help, because they found out that on this planet there is some people living there. It's a weird planet, it's not habitable per se, but there is some kind of pocket of habitability in some area.
And I kind of wanted to ask you about that. So Tilly goes out and she does her, well, she doesn't go out, she does her scans from inside the ship, and she says there's higher levels of oxygen, there's these decagon shaped pockets, and that there is evidence of life in one of them. And I thought that is a very SETI sounding kind of bit of research. Do we have that kind of technology where we could, it's not going to be broken down into little tiny, tricorder, but do we have that kind of technology where we could see like the levels of oxygen on in a specific spot on a planet?
It depends of how this level of oxygen is contained. So for instance, if before the crashing, they probably analyzed the surface of the planet, took pictures and spectrum. So in this case, you can see from the color of the spectrum and what we call the absorption band and the emission band, the surface and the composition of the surface. So maybe during this phase, the spaceship had recorded data from remote observations, basically, and she analyzed the data taken by the spaceship, and she may have noticed the presence of oxygen, which is kind of clear signatures in the mid-infrared specifically. You can see oxygen quite well. And in fact, the near infrared as well, because of the vibration of the molecule. So that's what she's probably been doing, using those kind of data. We can do that now. I'm not sure we can do that on a spaceship that crashed at the same time, but hey, this is science fiction, right? Why not?
Right. It's a lot easier to use tech in the 300 years in the future, 1,000 years in the future now, but their tech's old. Okay, so one of the things that also comes up, and I liked the sort of hidden civilization that was going on. So it looks very damaged and destroyed, and they're kind of clinging to it. It's a mining community, which of course, we talk about a lot, setting up asteroid mining. So that's, that's kind of where I related it to. I was interested in their teleporter into the building itself. So they just kind of like walk into a cave and then they're in a bar.
A saloon.
Yeah, there was a very old West feel to this
Exactly.
episode. I really kind
even
of
the guns,
that.
everything was very and the attitude and the energy between
the way they shot it. So it was, that like slow walk through the bar door of the villains, and I felt like you should have that Clint Eastwood whistle in the background, and so that was interesting. I liked it. The gun tech was not something I want to get into too much, but it was definitely interesting, especially how it's very different from what we're used to on Star Trek. Do you think that doorway provides sort of that bubble?
Yes.
Is that like that protective bubble from the atmosphere and everything? Because they, Saru mentions having Tilly go get some sort of treatment so that she can breathe the atmosphere or whatever. So they're not wearing like suits or anything like that, but they're obviously having some sort of internal tech that they're using to make everything breathable. So now they're inside this cave and apparently protected from the outside world. And I thought that was interesting.
So they basically created a pocket of habitability into the crust of the planet by mining and creating an environment that then becomes stable because they produce magically oxygen and magically get the right temperature and the right pressure.
And we talk about using like lava tubes on Mars, on the moon, and maybe even Mars as potentially places that we could build habitats for humans because they are protected from the outside, from the cosmic rays, and especially when you have a lack of atmosphere. Although I don't think lack of atmosphere was a problem on this planet. Then again, you're still shooting in Iceland, so.
Yeah, so in Iceland, it's possible to breathe. But it's true that there was no... That was kind of a weird moment. It wasn't clear to me why she said there was this habitable area and then they're outside walking. But you do remember that before walking out, they go to the lab and that somehow get their body adapted to the atmosphere of the...
Yeah, because Saru sends Tilly off to go get that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I did think that was interesting because it kind of removes the whole need for spacesuits. So, that was definitely an interesting way to go about it, and something, maybe that's another one of those wonderful science fiction things that now that it's been sort of brought up in a science fiction context, we might start to see come out of the technology that that other people are developing.
So what technology they were using? In my mind, they were using some kind of genetically modified the body itself. That's what I thought they were doing. That's why they were going to the medical bay. But in this case, when they go to the place where there is a lot of oxygen, where the Corridans were living, they could breathe again. So I don't know.
I don't know either. That's some Star Trek magic right there.
So anyway, maybe they find a technology to modify genetically human beings so they can breathe on the planet with an atmosphere which is not perfect for humans. And that's something that we may have to do. It's something that possibly if we continue to explore space and we want truly humans to put a foot on planets, we will have to do that because we're not going to be able to live all our life into an astronaut outfit. See how poorly we could handle being contained in lockdown in the house. So imagine now if you have to wear this all the time, you will not survive this. So
no, it's bad enough you're on a faraway planet with no friends and very few friends, no family, just you and the science team that you're with, and now you're stuck in a spacesuit the entire time. So I could see that. I would rather find a different way to solve that problem, honestly. So what about that ice? So the ice, we're told as the episode goes on, is parasitic ice.
Yes.
So now we have, would we count that as life? Would you say that parasitic ice is life? Are we looking at like an extremophile kind of thing?
Yeah, I thought this was kind of lichens. You say that, right? This kind of plants, mix of
Oh, lichens. Okay.
yeah, plants that grow and on a structure and feed themselves on the structure. And if you have the plant like this, pure ice is not very interesting. You can basically feed yourself on pure water. You need to have some nutrients. And the spaceship probably is some potential nutrients because of the surface, because of the inside of the inside of the spaceship. So that's kind of lichens basically taking over the spaceship and trying to grow inside the spaceship and come inside. That's what we hear at the beginning of the episode, when you have these vibrations, probably some kind of fractures in the hulls of the spaceship.
So would we count that as life? So I'm pretty sure we count lichen as definitely a life form. So here we're saying that this parasitic ice is like a lichen.
Yeah.
Could we detect that from someplace? Would that leave a biosignature of some sort?
If he has the same kind of signature than lichens on Earth, yes. But if it's something very exotic, which has completely different chemistry, it would be very difficult to detect this. And in our field, we have this researcher who are very concerned about the fact that we land spaceship on Mars and take samples and bring them back. This is planetary protection. But that's because of this. We don't know. Maybe there is this kind of extreme life on Mars or on asteroids that survive into this extremely weird chemistry from feeding from rocks and using radiation from space. We don't know. Potentially exist. If we bring samples of asteroids on our planet, we may bring this parasitic life. And it's so different that it will be difficult to find it, to identify it, and to fight against it.
And then we also talk sometimes about how, was Earth life seeded by these asteroids hitting us, and all of that bombardment. That's where we theorize a lot of the water comes from, that possibly that's how life was seeded here. And of course we can talk about panspermia all day and spreading life everywhere. But until we have that second sample, we don't have answers. They're just have questions. So I know we have a lot of extremophiles on our planet, things that survive on snow, things that survive in sulfur hot springs, things that, there's life pretty much everywhere. But we haven't found it out there. And here we've seen like several different interesting forms of life on Discovery so far. We've seen the transworms, we've seen all of the different humanoid sort of creatures and different populations wandering around, and now we're given parasitic ice. What do you think is going to be the first thing that we find as the Institute? What's out there that we might find soon?
We will find out soon that there is life in our solar system on places where we have liquid water. For me, the signatures of metagenesis on Enceladus, the presence of methane in the atmosphere of Mars, those are indicative that something is happening, something we don't understand. So I'm not betting on it, but
you're not going to do the cup of coffee thing.
But there is so many kind of weird signatures detected recently on Mars and and also on Europa, that there is something here. It's weird that the three places for which we have potentially liquid water, we have those weird signatures, right? So I think it's gonna come pretty soon that we will find the life, biological life, very simple monocellular life, but there will be some kind of life on one of those bodies.
Speaking of technological signatures or biological signatures, one of the things, and I know this is not your area of expertise, but they talked about in the episode, they talked about in the episode being able to detect the wormhole. So the villain comes out and he has all of this information about the ship and the wormhole, and he figures out immediately that they're time travelers, and he's pretty smart. But obviously he's got some tech that can figure all of this out. And again, you know, we're nearly a 1,000 years in the future, so from previous Star Trek. So this is a lot of change. But I was kind of, he mentioned detecting the high energy gamma rays and the gravitational waves of the wormhole and the ship coming out. And I was wondering, I know we definitely are detecting gravitational waves. That's what the LIGO and Virgo are for. What kind of high energy gamma rays are we seeing out there? And are we detecting wormholes? That seems, I think that's still very theoretical. And
Yes.
so, you know.
So wormhole have not been observed. Okay, it's speculative structures, as I say. It's something that theoretically could exist considering the structure of the space-time. It's been mentioned as a potential structure in 1977, 1917, a long time ago. Okay, but it's purely mathematical.
Right.
I mean, we made progress on this, and as I say, it's not my, as you mentioned, it's not my field, so I'm not gonna say much more about that. But wormhole is basically a break into the space-time continuum that allow an object to go from one place to another place without having to travel through the space-time. It's just like basically a conduit between two areas in the space.
I remember it being explained when I was a kid in a Madeline L'Engle book, A Wrinkle in Time. They were called tesseracts, and she basically said you take a string, and if you hold it out here and you want to get from point A to point B, you have to walk all the way across the string, and it takes a lot of time. But if you take the two ends of the string and you bring them together, you have zero distance to cross, and that's basically what a wormhole is that folding of space-time so that you can get into that. And that's, I'm a planetary scientist like you, so I'm that's about the extent of what I have on that. But it was interesting that, you know, they have, you know, we're building huge detectors to find gravitational waves, and they've got basically a gravitational wave detector on a ship.
But you remember gravitational wave, the physics of detection of gravitational waves started recently. I mean, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we basically started building gravitational wave detectors. The first one now is LIGO, and there is more on this planet. True, they're huge, but we know that we can detect interesting things with those instruments. It's very likely that we make progress in the detectors. So what do we detect with gravitational waves at the moment is most of what has been detected is an interaction, gravitational interaction between a neutron star, the black hole, a neutron star, and a white dwarf. So some kind of binary system, and the collapse of two neutron stars together, producing a disturbance in the space-time because it's extremely massive body forming, for instance, a black hole, or we don't really know yet the physics of what's happening.
Right, and again, as you said, it involves usually these two massive objects having some sort of collision and collapsing their gravity state. So for the ship, obviously, the wormhole has to be massive. It's clearly a huge fold in the space-time continuum. So it's a huge fold in space-time. So therefore, you know, you have to have something that can detect that. The gamma rays are probably a result of just how much energy has to be put into the system. And then you have the gravitational waves as the disturbance as everything collapses once it's done.
So probably the gamma ray burst will be some kind of the equivalent of the heat of the wormhole because extremely energetic. We do detect gamma ray bursts regularly. We have a satellite called Swift, which is basically looking for them in the sky. And every time there is one, he sends an alert to all astronomers interested in this field, and they point the telescope toward it to detect the afterglow, we call invisible light, and to do spectroscopy. So we understand the physics of what's going on in this gamma ray burst. It's interesting because when I was a student in the 90s, we had no idea what was those things. And now we have a physics, we have theories around them, we know how they form, how they evolve. So it's amazing to see that how the progress in such a short amount of time, in 30 years, in a new field of research. So that's happened for gamma ray bursts. It's now happening for gravitational waves. And of course, the writers of the science fiction Star Trek show took the two most fancy words and put them together as kind of an output or a way to detect wormholes. But
Right.
frankly, the physics is not there. I'm not a specialist once again, but I don't think we have rationalized the physics of wormholes to the point that we know there will be detectable gravitational waves and detectable gamma ray bursts. Sorry.
Okay. Again, we've been introduced to, talking about how the science changes and how it improves, and we right now our gravitational wave detectors are huge buildings with long tunnels and two mirrors that vibrate on very, very fine levels, and here it's obviously built into a ship somehow. And again, it goes down to that as time goes by, we can miniaturize a lot of this tech more and more. I mean, we see that with our own cell phones. And so once again, we're introduced to that tiny, tiny transporter. We don't see it used this time, but we do see it handed to him. So we actually get like a decent visual on it. And it was like this big. It was less than the size, I think, of a deck of cards. It was very tiny. And that again goes back to that as time goes by, we can improve on the tech. And I'm still very curious as to how it works. And I noticed that there was, again, no explanations given. So there's not even the mention of, oh, it takes 30 seconds to recharge.
Nothing. We don't know anything.
We know nothing.
Nothing yet. But it's gonna come. It's gonna come.
So
I like the repair kit. If you want to talk about
the repair kit, yes, please talk. I got really into this episode, so I have to admit I didn't take as many notes as I did last week.
The repair kit is more or less the same kind of technology that we see at the beginning of the first show when they build this bed and the shower and the office. It's made of this material that can take different color and shape, and it's controlled by a computer, which is nowhere to be seen. So they use this repair kit to repair the I forgot the name of this.
It was a communications part. Again, a lot of technobabble, and I didn't write all of it down, but so it was a communications relay of some sort.
He started mentioning a bit about the story of the repair kit, but we are probably this technology will be explained over the future episodes, I'm sure, how they use them and where they come from and so on. But they're kind of cool.
So we're kind of running out on time here. Do you have any final thoughts on this episode, science or otherwise?
I want to quiz you on the species of Linus.
Oh, on the species of Linus. So, okay, right. I looked it up because I was not about to get this one wrong, since I got the Orions, horribly forgot about the Orions and the introduction of them into Star Trek, which I'm not going to discuss here because it's not politically correct. So Linus is a Saurian, which is sort of that lizard-looking guy who had this amazing spectral view, 74,000 nanometers worth of spectral view. And it's mentioned, I think, multiple times throughout Star Trek history. So this race dates back, I believe, all the way, if not to the original series episodes, at least to the very first Star Trek movie. So it's been around a while, and obviously making a comeback, because I know there's also a character on Lower Decks.
So for comparison, human can see only 700 nanometers.
Yes, 700 nanometers. We don't see a lot.
We don't see anything. We basically very blind.
There are animals on Earth that see far more than we do into the infrared. Much easier. And I'm always kind of fascinated by that, because I have no way to relate to it. I don't know what it would look like visually at all to anybody. Because I see what I see, and so it's hard for me to imagine beyond that. Like how do you see in those other spectrums? So 74,000 nanometers is a lot.
A significant part of his brain is needed to process all this information. So I'm kind of surprised that he has the same size as us. I will imagine a species like this with such a big eyes, we have a bigger brain to take care of the processing of information coming from the eyes. Because our brain is not that much, but for something like 100 times more, a species that can see 100 times more lights, more colors, can you imagine? There's a lot of information to process.
That is, I mean, that's a computer's worth of information to process almost instantaneously to even have any sense of your surroundings. So Now, what else
But
did you want
to
to?
finish, we just mentioned that at the end, the spaceship is reunified with the
With Michael, right?
Michael, sorry. And yeah, she's just been waiting for them for 1 year.
For
Remember?
1 year, which is impressive because we didn't know when that was going to happen, when they were going to come out of the wormhole, which for a technology that was doing really well at launching at moving Michael's mother around in time to one particular point, it did not do a very good job of moving everybody where they were expected to be. No one has arrived at the planet they planned on. They did not arrive together. So it's wormholes, notoriously unreliable, folks, notoriously unreliable, even in science fiction. We can't find them here, and they don't work on shows. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I was kind of fascinated in a sort of an offhand way by Michael's hair because she had very short hair going into this, and I know how much my hair grows in a year, and it isn't that much. So I'm kind of curious. I was expecting her to say 10 years just by the look of her. So I'm gonna be interested to see what coming up, like what they've experienced over that past year, because she's been, I'm guessing from the previews that she's been with Book this whole time. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of damage they've gotten up to together. So what else? Did you have any thoughts on this episode? What did you like it? Were you?
I prefer the first one personally. I like the combination of the two actors, the first one. But we had to have a spaceship, and you have to have the spaceship together again with Michael. It's the transition.
Yeah.
The fights with these bad characters on the colony, yeah, it was very westernish and fun, but I would probably forget that very quickly.
Yeah, I liked a lot of the interpersonal stuff going on. Giorgio she's become a very interesting, compelling character.
I think we're gonna have trouble from her.
I definitely agree. But I did love that she was, when they were just, you have a one-woman tactical team, and all I could think was, it's Giorgio. I don't think they need much more, And I loved watching Stamets try and fix things without, help. And Reno just sitting there giving him such a hard time. That is such a great character combination. I enjoy every interaction they have because I'm always laughing and I'm always finding myself thinking, I know people like that, people who will just continue to work despite the fact that they need to take a break and they don't want to hand anything off and they don't want any help. And yeah, so that was, I really liked that part. And I was also very happy to see that Hugh and Stamets are getting their act together, because that got annoying. But
okay,
and of course, welcome back, Tilly, my girl.
You like Tilly, yes.
I do. And I really think I like that she was given a chance to kind of come into her own a little bit in this episode.
Saru says something very nice to her, and I wish my boss would tell me stuff like this from time to time. As the first example of an encounter, you are a good example, or something like this.
Yeah, it's like you make an excellent first contact.
Yeah,
I think was basically what he told her. I didn't write down the quote, but I definitely got warm fuzzy feelings from that, so I liked it. So while I'm kind of with you, I think I preferred last week's episode. This one felt very, very Star Trek emergency, all of the technobabble, fix all the things. And aside from the side plot of the whole Wild West aspect going on, it was definitely one of those, oh look, the wormhole has spit us out, we have crash landed, the ship is entirely broken, and we can't communicate with anybody, and everything doesn't, nothing works. And it felt very, and then the whole, oh, the ice is going to crush us, and everything came down to, a countdown of is anything going to work the way it's supposed to? And it was definitely, if I were writing this episode, I would have a sense of Galaxy Quest about me. Well, everything has to work at that very last second. So I'm with you. I kind of preferred the exploration of the last episode to this one. So, but I'm excited to see where it goes still. And now that we're all back together, this should be fun.
Okay.
All right. Did you have anything else, or was that pretty much it for you?
That's it. Thanks a lot.
Okay, and so that's it. We'll be back next week. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell down there for notifications. Feel free to leave a comment. I'd prefer that you be nice, but I understand some people are going to say what they're going to say. So leave a comment or 5 with your thoughts and questions. We're going to try to get to some questions at some point. And thank you for watching, everyone. So have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye. Live long and prosper.